Thank you, Mayor White. For those who are with us tonight, you're welcome to join us for the invocation. This evening, we are thankful for the opportunity to come together again after taking a brief recess in the month of July. Our community continues to change as we grow, and our council continues to strive to make Greenville the best it can be as we face the challenges that come with this growth. Now, as we roll up our sleeves to implement new policies and manage our budget that we adopted earlier in the summer, we do this together with the common goal of serving the stakeholders of our city. We're grateful for the people who join us tonight in council chambers, by live streaming, or in the future via our meeting recording on our website. We cannot effectively do the work that we do without the engagement of our community. Help us be thoughtful in our deliberations, not only this evening, but each day going forward.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember John DeWorke.
Here.
Councilmember Lillian Fleming. Here. Councilmember Ken Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Will Brasington. Councilmember Russell Stahl. Councilmember Dorothy Dow.
Here.
Mayor Knox White.
Here, you have the minutes of July 11th, which will stand approved as submitted unless there are any objections. Seeing none, those minutes are approved. We have a few folks who signed up to speak to us this afternoon. Please be mindful that we have a 3-minute rule. The clock is on the wall up here, so just keep your eye on the clock, but we appreciate hearing from you. First is Hannah Slowick. Thank you. Welcome. Sure, she'll help you. She'll pass it out. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Somebody tell me when.
You go right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
you.
All right. Good evening, Dear Council. I'm speaking on behalf of concerned residents of the Northampton neighborhood, part of District 2, to bring attention to the criminal activity in our area.
Yep.
We have a wonderful working relationship with local law enforcement, but they, like us, are simply overwhelmed and exhausted. For those who are unfamiliar, I have provided a printed map to guide you. We are a single-family residential district of approximately 80 households situated between Hampton Pinckney and North Main. We are surrounded by redevelopment zones which, as defined by the city of Greenville, are areas in which you hope to promote investment and development. In other words, we are currently depressed and underdeveloped, and we are asking that you take the necessary steps to facilitate change. The Northampton neighborhood serves as a pass-through for foot traffic between the Salvation Army, Stratham Place Apartments, and the infamous Super Save Mart at the corner of Buncombe and Shaw. I will share a brief but non-comprehensive list of the things we experience on a regular basis. Urination and/or defecation on and around our property, drug use and dealing near our homes, litter and trash in our lawns, on our streets and clogging our gutters, theft of our belongings, sexual activity in parked cars, taunting of our pets and personal threats against us, disruptive noise, trespassing, loitering, panhandling, the list goes on and on. On Saturday, July 30th, we woke up to gunshots. I'm sure you can appreciate that we struggle to feel comfort in our homes, and we are asking the city to do more. Hold the Salvation Army accountable for denying room and board to known offenders. Mandate drug tests. Do not allow the exploitation of resources that should be going to good people in need. Enforce rigorous background checks at the Stratham Place Apartments. Establish strong relationship with the county to police the area. Do not allow either the county or the city to use the border as a cop-out. Annex it if you have to. Follow through with your incarcerations. We have Greenville PD on speed dial. I personally text our lieutenant. They arrest the same people every week and they're sick of it. We are sick of it. Don't get me wrong. We appreciate the need for the services provided by both the Salvation Army and the Stratham Place Apartments. However, the proximity of these establishments to one another, combined with the heavy drug traffic, has created an undeniable problem. A problem that compromises the mission and reputation of the Salvation Army and perpetuates the cycle of poverty by exposing at-risk youth and those experiencing homelessness to crime and substance abuse. I'll close by saying that without addressing these issues, there is no opportunity for investment or redevelopment. If you aren't willing to invest in the area yourselves, how can you expect anyone else to? These issues should be top of mind for the city of Greenville, as they are for the citizens of the Northampton neighborhood. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your action.
I appreciate your comments. When I saw the crime report at Stratham Court, it really caught my attention because I know we played a big role in the renovation of that facility. And we had a relationship with the owners and such. So I actually called the manager when it happened. It's more than just an incident. It's something that really hits us because we had an investment in that facility, and how it's managed is something that I hope we'll double up to find out what is going on there to make sure it's still what we think it is. But at one time, we had a really good relationship with those folks. And second, I just want to say, thank you for the investments you and your neighbors have made in that area. It looks like a whole different place, whole different kind of neighborhood, but no doubt there are major challenges. And just one for the comment. I know we had a really serious effort a couple of years ago with the Salvation Army and the other groups.
Not only
and
that, with the.
I don't know where that
we have a
went.
Relationship with the sheriff, et cetera, and it is a continuous cycle. One of the things that, because of Stratton's place, their relationship with the federal government, there are certain things that we cannot demand them to do, okay? We can monitor the area, and then you got the county, so we're caught in between. You got the county, you have the city, we got all those things. And then for a while, things were great, just like you said. Then next thing you know, you have some other people move in, then whammo. Then we have a change. So we are not going to abandon you. We're still going to be looking at that particular area. Our sheriff's department and the city police, they have worked out issues together, and they're still working it out. But sometimes they get pulled away from other things, but we're going to try to make sure that we work with that.
We do have some further annexation plans in that area, by the way, and Shannon perhaps can fill you in on that, because I do think you're absolutely correct to point to that, because we have these kind of no man's lands in between. The further we
Right.
can pull the borders out, the safer the area will be. And that's something we are working on. In fact, you might, says Shannon, wave your hand, Shannon. Yeah. You might want to talk to her, but I appreciate you coming because the manager's heard you, the police chief, and
Yeah.
we do want to be really attentive to this. So thank you.
Yeah, they're working some things out, but like, let's say if you're in the county, then that handicaps us if it's a city issue. And they know exactly where the lines are, particularly the prostitutes. They can step over them in a second and you won't have a clue what's going on. So this issue happens to 3 areas that touch the county. And it takes us a while to organizing, to get it finalized, because they are very professional in what they do in curriculum world. We appreciate you coming.
Is that in your district or is it Lillian?
It's
Okay.
Council
Sure.
District One's.
District 2.
Okay. You're right across. So
Yeah, he's right across.
you're between city council districts too. So
Yeah.
maybe
We're
we
just,
can
yeah,
get Mr. DeWarkin involved
we're
with this too.
hopeless.
We
Yeah.
can get Mr. DeWarkin involved with that too. That'd be happy.
No, I mean, you're not hopeless.
No.
By
It
any
feels that
stretch
way
of the
sometimes.
imagination.
No,
So I
it just,
appreciate your
yeah.
comments.
Yeah, thank you very much.
you all.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And there are some neighborhood association meetings that happen, which gives you access to the private phone numbers for the police officers to come and see. So please make sure that that we have you working with us on that. Thank you.
Jack Logan, Jack, I know you're here.
The last time I stood before y'all, there had not been a murder in the city of Greenville.
I know, no, you're right. You shouldn't have come and talked to us.
That's right.
I take murder serious.
Yeah.
What happened on Liberty Lane never should have happened.
Yeah.
First of all, they falsified information coming to get a permit, saying it's going to be a venue. The next thing you know, it was a club,
Right.
followed by murder.
Yeah.
I stand against murder, and I know exactly what this lady's speaking about as well. All of you got my email, received my email, where I asked Slade to revoke the liquor license, which you have no control over. I'm standing here tonight asking Mr. McDonough, I don't care who the people are, what race they are, I stand for right to revoke the business license before the next person get murdered. Every time my organization asks for a permit from the city, we abide by all rules. Jack not trying to stand at one city plaza to sell marijuana. Jack not trying to stand at one city plaza to do anything illegal. We follow the rules that the city offer. Again, I asked this council to do what's right. I never thought I would have heard what she just said, but she spoke the truth because I see it every day. Crime is increasing in the city. And I love every one of you because you've done a good job in the city. The police department's doing a good job. Then, in knowing the last week, I do believe it was 4 teenagers charged with murder right down below where she lived. We've got to step it up. The race don't matter to me. Again, the final thing I would ask city manager to do, when a person lie on a document and turn around and do something different, revoke the business license before the next person. You trusted them one time. You got a young man in a grave. We can't ignore. Again, the race, the color, the sex don't matter to me. There's a right and there's a wrong. They lied, and I'm asking y'all to revoke the business license. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In past experiences, when we have problems with businesses like that, we've shown no hesitation at all to revoke business licenses. It's a tough thing to do, but we've done it many times when it's necessary to do so. I believe this is a matter of active discussion. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bruce Wilson? Mr. Wilson.
I want to thank council for allowing me to speak tonight. It's good to see you, Mr. Gibson, Ms. Fleming. Mayor, I'm before you to speak about a particular neighborhood. I'm standing behind me is Miss Stacy Donalds, whose mother was viciously murdered in an abandoned home in a community. I just listened to the young lady speak about a community, about urination and things like that. Well, I want to talk to you about a sex offender that was roaming a particular community that was unregistered, walking around children, who viciously killed Miss Donald's mother, who was nearly 70 years old in an abandoned home. I spoke with one of your supervisors earlier today who informed me that he did send the owner of this abandoned property a notice and then sent out another notice. I know that it's difficult to challenge a private homeowner in trying to get a home condemned. But I am standing before council asking that happen. I'm asking council to do everything in its power to make sure that this homeowner either fix up this building, do something extra to make sure that individuals cannot get into this building, or make sure that something happens with this house. This particular house, Mayor, is right next door to Miss Donald. She has to walk out of her house every morning with her children and witness where her mother was killed every morning, every day. So I'm asking council and especially the city attorney. And I know, Mr. McDonough, I know I get on your nerve a little bit, but I'm actually want to talk to city attorney. I know this is difficult because it is a private owner. But this family is dealing with, this house is less than, I would say, 20 feet away. And it's painful. This just happened last month. And so I'm asking council, the city of Greenville, to do whatever it can to help this family. And I know it's a difficult challenge, and I know, but we're standing before asking council to do whatever it can because something needs to happen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ms.
and we're
Fleming.
very sorry for what happened.
Thank you. And Mr. Gibson, I can't still dunk on you. I just want to put that in the record when I come down here.
Man, a one-legged dog can duck on me these days, so that is.
I don't believe that. For 1 minute.
Okay,
Slow
we have a
and fast.
special presentation. We have former city council member, State Representative Chandra Dillard with us. Always glad to have her with us, especially when she's out of session, if she engages in some good productive activity. Thank you. And Gail, please. Okay. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
Tell you, these discussions are taking me back. And one of them I was involved in, even on the state level.
All right.
The neighborhood between here and there in the line. So y'all asked me about that afterwards. But I'm here to share good news.
Yeah.
Or at least I thought I was sharing news.
Okay.
But, you know, it's just hard to keep something good from getting out in Greenville, right?
Right.
And so we wanted to come, and I have Gail the priest with me today. And we have some friends at the zoo today. And so today was arranged really to talk about the $1 million state appropriation that the Greenville Zoo received. And you can still applaud this. So I suppose today really comes as a thank you to Councilwoman Dorothy Dow for arranging a very small meeting just to brainstorm and the girls getting together, Lydia Thomas and Gail DePriest, to talk about the needs of our zoo. And no one had to convince me because of my history with the zoo, because of my proximity to the zoo of where I have lived for over 50 years, about this economic development attraction and education facility that we have in the upstate, one of only two in the state. And so it was very casual, really, our conversation. Back on December 14th, that seems like a long time ago. I had to look up the date in my calendar.
Yeah, I did too.
And they told me what they needed. And I said, well, if we can get funded, how much would you like? I mean, what's going to do the job? And they said $1 million. I didn't blink. I said, wow, inside. And so off we went in the budget process. And John DeWorking can tell you about our convoluted, crazy, sometimes budget process. And I did not even update the zoo leadership until May 23rd, when I knew it was in the House side of the budget. And at that time, Lydia began to lose sleep. So see, if I had told her in January, she would have had a lot of sleepless nights. So we're just here to say thank you to Councilwoman Dow. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this partnership. As I've told everybody who's asked, you know, I don't care whose district something is in. The zoo used to be in my district. It is no longer. But when it's good for Greenville, it's good for Greenville. And I felt that way even as a member sitting up there. And I hope that the state investment will leverage other public-private funds so that we can get to the $5 million capital campaign goal and have the best zoo that we can have on this side of Columbia. Okay. And so I know the zoo leadership is here, the board. I don't know if Lydia wants to say anything or Gail. You good? What is Luke?
I bet, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't come prepared with anything fancy tonight, other than to say the zoo, on behalf of the city, the zoo is very grateful to you for your help in seeing this through. I've already spent that money 10 times in my own head already. So we got plenty of work to do, and I'm looking forward to getting it done. So I thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
If I could just add, you know, I really commend the Zoo Foundation, the Friends of the Zoo, for rolling up their sleeves and diving in. We did have a rough couple of years right before COVID, looking at a threat to our AZA certification, which is so critical for this facility. You know, fast forward 2 years and the zoo is running in the black, right? Had a magnificent gala that John DeWorkin and Will Brazington and I attended as a fundraiser, and it was packed and the community stepped up. I thank Governor McMaster for supporting this $1 million grant and recognizing the value of this zoo to our community and to the upstate. And I have all the faith in the world that the private sector will step up as well, and that this zoo will thrive and grow in the means that we have the capacity to do. It's an amazing facility for our conservation efforts and for our education efforts. I don't get much traction on taking my kids to the zoo anymore, but John DeWorkin does, and I'm going to have grandchildren. Tell my kids that. It's critical for us, and I just thank you all for your faith hanging in there. And to Representative Dillard, I'm forever grateful for you taking that coffee with us. Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Outstanding.
And Representative Dillard is often mindful of the city of Greenville, so we appreciate all that she does for us really year round. and occasionally brings a check too, so we appreciate that as well. Thank you. Okay, council, you have the consent agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda? You get the motion second? Okay, clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Dial.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Regular agenda, 15A, second and final,
And this is a first reading, 15A.
first reading.
Yes, sir. An ordinance to amend an agreement with Community Works for the Home Buyer Assistant Program to provide assistance to all qualified individuals in Greenville County.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion second?
Question.
Okay.
The amendment is 35% of monthly income. Why so high?
I believe those are the regular criteria that we have. I believe that would be a better suited for Community Works to answer. If Katie, do you have?
Okay, because I always.
We do have
thought that you
representatives
could
from them
Spend
too.
more than 30% of your income. So why, that's why I'm trying to figure out why is this 35%?
Some industry standards, and I think Katie can elaborate too if she'll come up here. Some industry standards allow the monthly mortgage payment to be a little bit higher just to wrap in any HOA fees, insurance, and other things of that sort.
Still good.
Yeah, and I can also add that FHA requirements are up to 45%, which is the purpose of this amendment. And then secondly, with the rising interest rates, we're seeing more and more people having to spend just a little bit more in order to afford both more expensive houses and the higher interest rates.
Do you think we are setting them up for success by dedicating 45% of their income to their home? I mean, we've spent so much time talking about living within your means means 30% for the roof over your head and the utilities. And now we are setting, I mean, I know the law says it. I just am I'm a little taken aback.
Yeah, I was, and it bothers me a little bit because yes, they may want to spend more, but if they had more, they wouldn't be in this program.
Okay, how many are you actually seeing that meets that 35%? Typically, I've been seeing those that we qualify and we process at that 30%.
I would say most of ours are right around that 35%. We usually turn people down if they tip over the 36%. Just really depends on the program. This is specific grant funding that we receive from United Way to help support this, and this is within the United Way metrics as well.
Is there any way that if we see that this becomes a problem and a hindrance to people being able to be involved in the program that we could modify?
I believe so. Staff can continue to monitor it and look at what the metrics are and what we are approving, and we can work with Community Works on those as well.
Yeah, the only thing I'm saying is that the federal government says, you're not supposed to spend more than 30%, then we put this down there. I'm just worried about it. But if there's a way we can monitor and see that it hinders the number of people who have the ability to be able to involve in this, because we just finished talking about creating wealth, and here we go trying to add 5% more. I'm having a problem with it.
I think our narrative has always been consistent on that 30% of your income is the limit to stay within your means. And if we adopt a partnership policy that says, well, 35, 45, I know it may be the times, but we are not setting up someone for success if we put them in a house and 45% of their income is going to that house. Over the long run, time has said they might not get to keep that house, and then we've done it all over again.
My understanding is that 35% actually increases the number of people who would be able to participate in the program. Is that not right?
It does.
Okay, so the question is, as we are increasing the number of people who can qualify and actually participate in the program, are we seeing a higher rate of those individuals unable to keep up with the mortgage payment and losing their homes?
I particularly cannot speak to this particular one because this would be the first time we're using these guidelines. I can only speak to the 30%. I think only about one or two I've seen since I've been here in 2018 has come back and satisfied their loan with us out of maybe about 25 or so. So I know with at least the Prisma, we are doing well. The 35%, I'd have to defer to Katie on the other programs that they've seen.
Yeah, I would say historically across all of our programs across the entire state, we're at about a 5% foreclosure rate. It's a 5-year forgivable term, so 20% is forgiven each year. At the 5-year mark, we completely forgive it, and it is equity in their home. So once the 5-year mark happens, we can't keep track of them because our mortgage is satisfied.
Okay. And my understanding, the 80% AMI dropping to 90% to 80 is also designed to increase the number of people who can participate.
Correct. And again, these are two different programs with different guidelines and restrictions that they have. And they are also working with those FHA requirements as well, which is the 45%. So these are much more stringent than the actual loan portion is. So even though the loan would allow you to qualify for a much higher payment or a higher amount of borrowing power, this is limiting you as well with that.
Now, with that said, I'm supportive of the changes that are making it more accessible to other people. I will say this, though. My recollection when we did the Prisma program was that one of the justifications for it was that Prisma was a city employer. They were expanding operations in the city, and this would help them as a city employer, business, whatever. This program does not seem to have those same qualifications to it, so there is some concern as to how this actually benefits the city. So while my concerns at this point aren't enough for me to vote against these, I would like you guys to keep track of that so that we can make sure that city dollars are either benefiting city residents or at least city businesses.
And I would add to that and just making a comment that we do track all of this, and we definitely will continue to do so. One of the benefits of the relationship building with Community Works is that when we expand our home buyer assistance, we can pair this with that, and we kind of already have a streamlined process of pairing that together for the city residents, such as with Summer Hall and those sorts of projects that we have.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
No, this does say
Yeah.
Greenville County.
And we are just adding this program. That does not take away the Prisma program for us.
Cool.
You might bring that, does it read that way in the amendment?
Clerk,
Thank
clerk-
you.
clerk will call the roll.
I can handle that.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Ready for vote? Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke,
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson,
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington,
Aye.
Councilmember Dow,
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Good discussion. 15B, we're back.
An ordinance to appropriate $774,081 in the capital projects and general funds for construction of the Cleveland Connector Traxler Trail.
Motion and a second,
So
please.
Second.
Motion second. Matt, do you want to be up there, I guess? More discussion? We have a number of issues to sort through on this, but any further?
Mayor and council, as we discussed during the work session, this item is a request to appropriate approximately $774,000 in the general fund to make up a project shortfall in the Cleveland Connector / Traxler Trail project. You all recall, we bid the project out in July. We got one responsive bidder. We negotiated in good faith with that bidder to bring the price down by approximately $240,000. We are still exploring opportunities to generate additional cost savings through some self-performing work. That being said, the available project resources are around 1.2 million. And so we need additional funding to move this project along and stay on a project timeline, which would get it open in January or February following the opening of the Swamp Rabbit Trail bridges. Right. That's a quick background.
Hey, Matt, with this price tag, we're seeing today 1.9 and change, would this be viewed as almost a CMAR approach whereby we would know that the cost wouldn't creep any further beyond what's advertised?
No, and I believe there's some contingency built into the bid at 1.9 million. But it's not a CMAR. There will be potential for change orders. But we don't have budget capacity for that without coming back to council.
And we are exhausting every measure we can to work against that possibility of change orders and further cost escalation.
Yeah, so Caitlin or Nick, if you all want to add that, they're the construction expert.
So there's a couple of of items that could result in some cost savings. There are also a couple of items of unknown that could result in change order for the cost to go up further. So it's kind of where it stands right now. You want more detail than that?
I mean, I figured that was probably the case. No, I won't belabor the details. My main interest was to understand if we had this thing capped and fixed, or if there's a possibility that we could be having similar discussions in, X amount of weeks.
So, as with any project, there's always the chance, but I just wanted to let you know. So we'll be working with Kaylin to help monitor daily this project. So our team, just like we do all of our other capital projects, will be out there daily monitoring and making sure everything's going on track.
I've got an SUV. I'll help haul some stuff too. Just call me.
We had a good and fair discussion, I guess, earlier. We continue to have it, I suppose. And I feel like in normal times, we could perhaps wait a little longer and see what happens. But these are not normal times in terms of the economy and the cost. And I think it's particularly critical that we stay the course on this project and move ahead with it. It still will bear fruit in the months ahead, and we'll probably forget this ever happened because the return on the investment is going to be huge and already is. So I think we stay the course, and glad you guys are continuing to monitor it and perhaps find some additional savings.
I have some questions. Okay, so picking up from where we started during work sessions. So my understanding of this project is that, and just to sort of bring everybody who else who's listening back up to speed or up to speed where I think I am. We put in a request for bidders on this. One of the conditions that we had was a fairly tight timeline. There have been representations that because of that tight timeline, and because of the search of a better term, busyness of these contractors, that we had only one bidder, and that one bidder came in substantially higher than what we had budgeted for, in substantial part because of that higher timeline. Is that fair? Is that a fair representation?
It's fair.
Okay, all right. So my understanding this project is going to be primarily, as far as raw materials, concrete and cement, concrete and steel.
Asphalt, concrete.
Asphalt, concrete.
And retaining wall. So
retaining
block.
Okay, and the fear is that the prices of these raw materials are not going to go down if we were to rebid this project, open up the timeline so that possibly other contractors could fulfill the project, and that we may be looking at more money if we rebid. Is that also fair?
I think that's accurate, yes.
Okay, all right. So between that time, I went and tried to do some research on where we are as far as some of these prices. And there's a steel manufacturer out of Chicago named Ryerson. And according to them on their website, they say as of July 27th, price of hot rolled carbon sheet steel has declined for 13 consecutive weeks, dipping below $1,000 a ton for the first time since March. Price as of July 27th was $861 a ton, representing a decrease of more than $550 a ton during this 13-week stretch. Can't find good figures on concrete, but at least as far as India is concerned, they're saying that their prices for concrete and cement are dropping as well. Is there a reason why we don't think we're going to be able to see those same type of decreases over the 6 weeks that it would take for us to rebid this project?
So two of the main line items that's driving the cost up is the earthwork piece and the block for the retaining wall. And so material wise, it kind of is what it is at that point.
Okay. But I mean, why would we not think that given that the cement is dropping and the steel is dropping, that the prices of those materials would not drop as well?
I can't speak for certain on the future and the market and all, but all I can speak to is in recent past and in recent months, we've only seen increases. Our local concrete suppliers just a few months ago sent out another notice that cement was going up.
How many months ago?
I want to say that was 3 or 4, maybe.
So that was beyond the 13 weeks that Ryerson is talking about in their report.
Yes.
Okay.
But we also, asphalt, I know from an estimate that we did last year to some bids that we got back this year, went up about on just the emulsion went up about $200 a ton.
And
So
what was the time frame on this?
that was a year difference.
A year difference, and we did when was that bid? The last bid?
The
one that
last
went up.
bid would have been January of 22. And so what we're
So
preparing
roughly
for.
6 months ago.
Right. So what we're preparing for this January's bid is about $200
Okay,
a
so
ton.
that-
Or so they're continually going up over the last 2 or 3 years. It's
But the
just
only
been going
benchmark that you have to confirm that is a bid that happened 6 months ago and another bid that happened 3 months ago, which was outside of the 13-week drop that at least the steel manufacturer is reporting.
Yes, but this is, we've been monitoring, and as far as what we're seeing on local prices, I can tell you that everything's going up. I can't promise that if we went and rebid this project, it would go up or down, but if I was doing an estimate today, I would not anticipate prices to go down. I would anticipate if we rebid this project, prices would go up.
Okay, now, in the last 13 weeks, we've also seen a slowing of housing starts, a slowing of a number of construction type things, have we not?
Answer to that. Believe so.
You don't or do not?
I don't.
Okay,
Do
all
not
right.
have the answer.
If that were the case, though, wouldn't we expect those slowings to result in lower cost from contractors as the demand goes down? Certainly the supply would go up, and basic economic theory would be that pricing would go down.
So Councilmember, it is a function both of price and scarcity. We're in a very busy market here, as we've shared in the work session. And just because the prices are coming down, they're coming down from a historic plateau. So we're not getting back to any sense of normalcy. We may shave some cost on the margin through material prices, but the cost of labor and the cost of the expertise of the firms we're still going to have to bear. We're in a tight market. If council desires, we can rebid this project, but our professional opinion is in all likelihood, you're going to see the same or higher prices.
Okay, all right, let's talk about how we're going to pay for this thing. All right, so my understanding was originally talked about doing this out of H-tax money.
So the existing funding in the project today is hospitality tax funding.
Sorry, say again?
The existing funding in the project today is all hospitality tax.
That's the 1.3 million that we've set aside.
Yes, sir.
But you're not comfortable paying these 787?
776.
774, 6?
4.
774.
Yeah.
You're not comfortable paying the 774,000 out of H-tax money.
It's not a question of use of H-tax money, it's a question of capacity. I'm not comfortable standing for you today and telling you that we have $774,000 of H-tax money available for this. I may be at that point later in the year, but my responsibility to you all for the financial condition of the city says that I can't with any certainty tell you that that's a safe investment for us to make right now.
Okay, so the alternatives that you are presenting to us are what? Tell me what those alternatives are.
So the two alternatives, the item before you is to appropriate general fund balance, of which there is significant capacity to do so. Or if council desires to redirect already appropriated funding to from another project from hospitality tax.
Okay, so if we take general fund money and we put it towards this, how do we, or can we ever get that money back?
Absolutely. Council could later in the year ask staff to reevaluate the hospitality tax fund and say, okay, it looks like we're in a good place. We have plenty of capacity. You all can take action to appropriate hospitality tax fund at that point and reimburse the general fund for this money.
I have some comments.
And we can do that?
Yes.
So we can take hospitality tax money and put it into our general fund?
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's a simplification, but essentially what we would do is we would unappropriate the general fund money and appropriate the hospitality tax money to the project to fill in the gap. So general fund would get back its money, hospitality tax will put it in the project.
Is there a time frame on that?
We need to do it in the same fiscal year.
So we need to do that by
June 30th.
Say again?
By June 30th.
June 30th of next year.
Yes, of 23.
Okay, all right, good deal. Thanks.
I have some questions to that point of funding source.
Yes, ma'am.
So Matt, the whole project, bridges, paperclip, in state, has been funded thus far from H-tax.
That's, I think there is a little bit of accommodations tax.
Okay,
in the bridge
tourism
project,
revenue.
funds. Yes, ma'am.
And you're saying we don't have the bandwidth in our tourism revenues for you to be comfortable committing to fund this.
No, so our projected fund balance at the end of FY '22, which was just a few months ago, was about $1.8 million in the hospitality tax fund. As I share with you all via email, I have concerns, given the economic situation on our collection projections. We have some bond payments that come due in the spring that rely on Unity Park donors. And so I have to get a comfort level that we've got those donations in. And we have some commitments in FY '24, next year, in the CIP that I want to make sure we have significant capacity to address. And so at this point in time, without more data, I don't think we have enough hospitality tax to do this.
So we all of a sudden the belt's tighter on tourism revenue.
Yes.
That didn't take long, but we're here. General fund in our budget discussions, and I'm not going to use that, we have surplus above the budget, and I believe part of the strategy you presented that we supported quite well, and it came to when we were talking about the neighborhood dividend, that the surplus, if it's there, that we would strategically preserve it to basically pay as you go for these big capital investments going forward, that surplus money in the general fund would be used to build so that we're not having to bond. Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct.
That was the strategy at the budget season.
Correct. And if we're not for this appropriation item tonight, this money would go into capital project
It
reserve.
would go into building that fund so that we could fund our capital projects over time and not be Keystone copying it when it comes to where do we get the money. It's planned priorities and building a fund to fund them.
Yes, ma'am.
Greenways and trails is an option you offered this morning to me, which is funded by tourism tax. Our line item is $1 million in the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
We could take $770,000 from Greenways and Trails to fund this need. And that would quite deplete the Greenways and Trails Fund, which I'm sure has an impact for some plans for projects. But we'd be consistently using this H-tax money, which we've recently heard a case we're using it because we can't spend it on anything else. So I think we should be consistent in that in this project versus robbing from the general fund to fund a tourism project. General fund, salient to tonight, funds things like police coverage for this area where we've had a murder in the city. And to take money from the general fund to fund this, I take great exception to. That general fund is for police, fire, paving, potholes, building a capital project fund. That's what general fund is for. We should not be taking money from general fund to fund things that can be funded from H-tax. I understand we could reimburse, but we have that time limit, the fiscal year. That concerns me. And also, I think it sets a very dangerous precedent when we take from the general fund to cover things that can be funded by H-tax because we got overextended in another area. I would much prefer for this to come from Greenways and Trails. And then next year in the budget, consider funding Greenways and Trails at $1.77 million. If that tourism rebounds. That way we haven't had a net change. That's all.
I'd like to, okay, I'd like to second what Ms. Dow said. Now, in point of fact, we have used general fund money, capital budget money for aspects of the Swamp Rabbit Trail. We've done that, probably all the earlier work was done that way. It's really been more recent times that we decided, because we had so much hospitality money, we thought, well, it's time now to switch it over to the other column. We've been fortunate to have a choice of either one, but we have in fact done that. But I do like that approach, though. I just think it's a sound approach. And also, the fact is we had all these things we got buffeted by the whole issue of the over at Hollingsworth, what that trail is going to look like, somewhat unexpected. We weren't originally going to do that, but because we had enough to do it, we said, okay, we'll do that too. And of course, all along the way on these bridges, we got hit with the county surprising us time and time again. But we have the capacity. That's what's great about it. We've had the capacity, so we switched everything over to hospitality. But actually, I think when we set up that line item for the trails, that's what it's for. It's for trails, and what are your priorities on the trails? And I think this is still a priority. I think that
it's
was
the
kind of
number one
Bridgewater's
priority
vision.
for the trail.
So we'll, in terms of timeline on other projects, they're on a timeline that's relatively slow, so we can do that. I think so. Actually, I think that's a good idea. Just to
So that opens up
use that trail.
questions. Go ahead, Will.
Yep. I mean, I'll defer to you, but I want to.
Oh, no, sir, go ahead. Go ahead.
So let me just add my 2 cents for what it's worth. Understand all these issues, understand the concerns and the points. Like anybody in this room, I feel certain, I don't like the escalated cost price tag of this, given my druthers. And to the point of the conversation, the work session earlier, if we could have gotten 1 to 2 to 3 years ahead of this thing, meaning the whole deal, we wouldn't be at this point now, just fighting the conditions that are before us from a scarcity of materials or labor, et cetera. I think here's what's going on in my mind. I love the approach that came up earlier about following staff's recommendation with the general fund money, and then there's no guarantee, but there's a likelihood or a possibility at least that when our capable CFO, who we entrust professionally to guide us and look at the holistic supply of city's financial resources, felt like it was appropriate to do exactly what he described to Councilmember Gibson, I'm totally fine with that approach. I mean, it is true with any designated source of funds under the City of Greenville umbrella. There are decisions and opportunity costs, right? Any $1 we take from any fund to use on something, it's by definition something that couldn't go to anything else. But look, Matt, in your capacity, you have time and again demonstrated to me a lot of wisdom, a lot of responsibility, professional discretion, and restraint. And I say that sincerely, broadly, but that's one reason why I like the staff's recommendation here. The other thing I want to be careful to point out is that in some of the opportunity to understand insight about this decision-making opportunity before this meeting, there was provided by our CFO some of these pros and cons and trade-offs about possibly using certain buckets of funds, right? General fund, trails, and greenways. One of the things I noticed today was that if council were to go with the already budgeted and intended for a variety of other projects, trails and greenways bucket of money, I did not like the suggestion that it would push, by your estimation, by your suggestion, a critically important pedestrian safety project tied to this whole game plan farther into the future as far as fiscal year 24 by what I saw. And I'm speaking very specifically, Mr. Mayor, we've talked about this a couple of times, the planned pedestrian bridge over the Reedy River that would transit pedestrians safely to and from the Richland Way Tunnel and help them enjoy everything that we're working to create. So in summary there, I like what staff is proposing. What I don't like are some of the not only potential, but forecasted unintended consequences under some doors number 2, doors number 3, like the trails and greenways. So I urge us to use great caution with eyes wide open.
Why would we take trails and greenways money to spend on that proposal, which isn't even designed or ready or going, versus covering the thing we've had a promise to do for a year and a half now? I mean, I feel like we're not tapping into greenways and trails for future things, and yet this thing, which is absolutely eligible, we're saying, let's take from the pot of money that funds, infrastructure, police, fire, potholes, and pay for the overrun that way. Why, I mean, when that trail, that bridge comes along, we can talk about funding that out of general fund. I wouldn't be in favor of that either, but I just don't understand why we would, again, take a project that has relied on tourism money and then cover an overrun out of the critical general fund money where we do have full discernment over what it gets spent on. And make no mistake, I have full confidence we have needs on our general fund. And if there is surplus in the general fund, we said, let's be diligent and save it for the big time capital projects so we can start making progress on that.
I think the good news is we have a choice of either one, or we can split the baby into a little bit of both. But this is kind of an unusual discussion. I appreciate what Matt's recommendation is, but I think his other point was you can do it either way. Yep.
So I know we talked about the pedestrian bridge, and And I think there have been some really good points about what's shovel-ready, what's not. So you've got the $1 million for the trails, right? What projects are shovel-ready in there? Do we know?
Most everything is going to require a decent amount of design. So shovel-ready specific, there's next to nothing shovel-ready proper.
Okay. So here's my concern, not objection, certainly, but just concern. And that is, I think you've got some really good projects. And I know the one that I'm really interested in probably is way down on the list of cost. But, for example, what we're looking to do under Church Street Bridge on the Swamp Rabbit Trail so that, some people don't feel threatened and scared. And, I'm married to someone who, has made comments, and friends and runners have made comments that, that is, that's a tough spot sometimes. On the weekends, no big deal, lots of people. But when there are a lot of eyes, people don't a lot of times go into there. So my concern is delaying these issues or projects by a year. And I'm just wondering if there's, usually there is a number of ways to skin the cat, right? And I don't think we've got the time to do that right now. So it's either like, we're going to do like with the amendment or not. And I hate to delay it by 2 weeks, but I just wonder if there's another way to skin this cat so that you can, I think what Councilor Dow's talking about, which makes a lot of sense, but then also what others are saying, and that is not delaying these projects. So if we're in the design phase of a lot of these, then I know you don't know this answer right now, but how much money does that mean, right? So everybody knows I'm not in the business of building anything, thank God, to this world. But I think the design phase is typically less expensive than the actual construction phase of things. And if that is the case, then is there a way to do what Councilor Dow is talking about, but then also not stopping the other projects we're working on, but looking at it as, okay, here's how much we're going to need now for the next 6 months to continue the design phase on these. I know it's a long.
Are we even in the design phase on those? I don't even think we're in the design phase.
Depends on what projects you guys are kind of referring to, but just to go back to the Church Street underpass, the designs on those are complete, and that project, if the money would come from Trails and Greenways, would be unaffected. Sliding Rock is the same. We're going into design build. That would be unaffected. But so there is some projects that would remain, but kind of what we're looking at for the next, including the pedestrian bridge that we're talking about, is a large chunk of what's coming up for this fiscal year.
So, this is certainly not what I'm proposing is not a vote by any means, because you can't really do it this way. But I'm wondering if we were to go with what the expected amendment is there a way for us to say, all right, city manager and staff, come back to us with a price tag of where we are for the next 6 months on the design part of that, or whatever the costs are, and to take a look and see if there are other pockets of money or maybe we have enough money to begin with after, if we do this amendment.
And remember, I'm also proposing the city manager take it very seriously to consider upping the greenways and trails in the next year's budget to compensate for this bandwidth issue. It would leave 230 in the greenways and trails, 1 million myself.
Thank you for doing the math.
You're welcome.
But wouldn't that come from the general fund?
Would what come from the general fund?
How would you fund the trails and greenways?
It's funded from H-Tax.
All exclusively?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
it hasn't always been.
It is now, and it has been for a period.
But I just would say, it hasn't in the past always been that way. And I've always been a supporter of using those funds for that purpose because we have so much, but I wouldn't be ideological about it and say never, never. Maybe Councilman Doyle would be, but I'm not going to be that way. We have other pockets of money to do things.
And another option is it for that.
I do think in this case,
second reading, but for tonight's reading, I very much want to offer an amendment to fund this from the Greenways and Trails.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a closing comment on this. I just want to say, from my personal standpoint, I hope and believe that the staff and their professional judgment and wisdom, even if it's from general fund dollars, continue to make recommendations to council about the wide utility and options to apply that money. So, what I'm trying to say here is whereas there may be sources of fundings and buckets of money that either from a practice or maybe sometimes from a policy standpoint we have turned to, it's a good thing when we have a surplus in our general fund. And I know there's multiple ways to use it. So we listed probably 7 or 8 theoretical things. And I just would say keep coming, because if that's your professional guidance and we've got it, I want to hear it.
A couple more questions. If we go the route that Council Member Dow is suggesting, the Trails and Greenways Fund, what exactly is the impact on other projects? What project do you think might be impacted?
The pedestrian bridge would be the most notable one that.
And how would that be affected?
It would probably push it an entire fiscal year. I anticipate that being between.
Well,
500
only
and
if we
600.
don't get back to it with the general fund dollars. That's where, I'm not going.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
He's just saying if you do it that way with
the
if you're being ideological about the hospitality taxes, we've done a number of bridges with capital budgets for neighborhood budgets and everything else, and I'd be in favor of doing that for that.
So
That's just me, though. I'm just speaking my own
So
opinion,
we're talking about pushing that pedestrian bridge to next year.
not necessarily.
I mean, I think we're going to look at what hospitality tax money comes in until Matt has more comfort with our fund balance in hospitality tax. Right now, he doesn't have a comfort with it. There you go.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I view the same approach as the way that was discussed in your line of questioning, Councilmember Gibson, which is you could also take the general fund now and refill it when the comfort level is received. To be clear, my main concern is because it's been suggested to me by staff that under door number 2, there is a real threat of a delay of a component of this. I think it's critical to pedestrian safety. And under door number 1, which you can get to with the same funds that carry value, but I haven't heard the same risk of that project delay on door number 1. I hope that makes sense, but that's why it's clear in my mind.
Yeah, no, I got you. So piggybacking on what he's asking. My understanding is we're talking about, if we go Trails and Greenways, we're talking about taking a pedestrian bridge, pushing it back to the next fiscal year. Where are we on that project now? What are the chances of us actually finishing that project or even starting that project this fiscal year if we don't do this?
In early conversations, so I haven't formally brought it to you guys yet. It's been talked about conversationally, but it's pretty.
What's that mean?
Sorry, say it again?
It has been raised because many of us are concerned that's a critical part of the process. And I think I was surprised to learn that it hadn't been pushed as far along as I thought it had been. So I expect to see it a very high priority.
So we're putting.
I don't expect to wait a year for something like that.
Yeah, for this fiscal year's money, yes, correct.
Push that to next fiscal year. And you guys are telling me that we're expecting that if we rebid this project, the costs are going to go up. Taking your line of reasoning, we're also looking at an additional cost that costing even more than what we've budgeted for this year.
Correct.
But we haven't budgeted for it.
If we go with the general fund, are there any projects that we have in the pipeline that we won't be able to do?
There's nothing immediately impacted. As I said, this money is destined for the capital project reserve, which means it's by definition unprogrammed. And so we're talking about the difference between an $11 million and $12 million capital project reserve on top of the neighborhood dividends being funded.
If we did Trails and Greenways now, would there be anything that would keep us from taking that same amount of money from the general fund and putting that towards the pedestrian bridge? The one that we're looking at that possibly might get kicked back to fiscal year 2021?
No, it would be a decision point later in the year when this project matures and it's ready for appropriation. If we've not used Trails and Greenways, that's where we would fund it from. If we've used Trails and Greenways, we would recommend an appropriation of hospitality tax fund if it's available. If not, general fund.
Can you restate that, because you know how I'm slow sometimes.
Say
So
again.
the question was, you've got 200 and how much?
220. 230.
You got 230 million
It's 770.
I'm in the wrong, talking in the
It's a
wrong
lot of
body
money,
right
though.
now.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Let me help all of you. The money is available. It doesn't matter which account it's in. He's fiscally responsible to make sure that we can pay for it and nothing is left. The idea I see here is, are we going to build the darn bridges or not? Or rebid it? The second thing, the money is in both pockets. Y'all see, keep saying, it's not going anywhere.
But
Oh, folks, it's there. Now, here's the key. She wants to say, let's do it fiscally out of the pot that we should do it out of. And as they bring the other to us, Matt will make a recommendation as that we will need to take X number of dollars out of this pot. We got to go to the general funds to take this until this building. Folks, it's going to happen. Let's just get to the point. Now, if she makes the motion, you either for it or against it.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, take over and let's
Okay.
move on while it's still awake.
I got a motion.
I've made the
I got it.
motion to
But do I
fund the
have a second?
I
revised.
got to vote first, so I have a couple more questions, if you don't
Well,
mind.
she had a
Well, I
motion.
need a second.
I got a
I'm
point.
asking for a
She
second.
got a motion.
I made a motion to revise the ordinance to fund this project from the Greenways and Trails budget
I
as
second
opposed
the
to,
motion.
thank you. So now we're just talking about that
Now,
amendment.
talking about the
Okay,
motion.
all right.
Anything
So,
else you want to say about that?
Questions now.
At the end of the day, it'll come out exactly the same.
It will
Yeah,
be
exactly, yeah.
Exactly
So-
the same.
It will.
All right, I have one question.
Okay, go right ahead.
and I got a point.
Would you like to go?
It doesn't matter.
Hey,
Your question
you
may
go
actually.
first,
all right.
and you
Yeah,
go.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
I'm just
all
saying, hurry up. We're trying to get home the same day we came. Hey.
She had a long weekend. She
The
wants to go.
the
get home.
Are the points
$230,000.
effective to the
Is
motion
there any
and
way
the
that-
second?
I'm sorry,
Is the discussion
on the amendment?
Yeah.
on
It's
the
on the
amendment?
amendment.
It's
Whatever
on
it
the
says, it has to
amendment
be
in
on the
terms of the
amendment.
money.
I'm gonna dinner.
Go ahead, sweetheart. Go ahead. It's on the amendment.
Two
Go
hundred
ahead.
thirty thousand dollars. Is there a way that we can? This is not part of the vote. A way that we can use the $230,000 to start moving forward on the bridge? Is that what we're saying?
Can.
Yeah,
Is that that?
Matt's shaking his head, yes, he can.
we're just doing dialogue right now.
It's not even designed.
Okay, so
Okay.
so
The answer is yes.
my
All
point
right,
where I think
second.
we should go and all this good stuff. I am absolutely committed to doing this paperclip. This is not an issue of whether or not we're going to do it or not. We're just trying to figure out how we're going to do it and
Pay for it, yeah.
With that said, I think the project should be rebid. But apparently that is not the consensus of the rest of council, so I'm not going to hold that up. I think that we would save money by rebidding it. I think that costs are going down. I think that I understand the points that you guys are making, but I'm telling you, when I look at these benchmarks, it looks like we could save money if we rebid this project and got some more contractors and bidders involved in it and come down.
That's
But
not towards the motion.
we are where we are.
Okay.
With that said,
He
I
can't
think
know that he-
the more prudent course of action, and I'm right on board with you, Councilmember Brazington, but I think the more prudent course of action is to go with the trail and greenways, with the understanding that if we get to a point where we need to move that pedestrian bridge forward, that we need to very strongly look at general fund to try to get that done.
That is
because-
germane to the amendment.
That is
Yeah.
the main.
Okay.
Call for the
Vote,
question.
please.
Do I
Vote on the
need to
amendment,
read it?
please. Okay.
Do I need to officially read it?
I call for the question.
Okay, the question is called.
Okay.
Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll
This is on the motion to amend.
Correct.
Okay?
on the source of the funds.
If you are in support or
Y'all,
opposition.
We're not gonna call y'all back up here no more.
Don't go far.
Okay.
Councilmember DeWorke?
Is this for?
The
Yeah,
amendment.
This is the motion to
On the
amend.
trail.
amendment.
On the trail. Okay.
Aye.
As modified by the Dworkin comments. I'm going to add.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye.
The motion to amend
Okay,
passes.
that is amended. Now we have the motion, the vote on the ordinance as amended.
I so moved.
Do I need to read it?
Motion from the second. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Okay, it is so done. very different discussion when you don't have any money, but who would have guessed when we have lots of money that we can't, we have to have such a lively.
Mr. Mayor, as we get ready to move on, let me just reiterate, if I may, a point
Yeah.
that was made. I think one thing to that dialogue that came through crystal clear is the expectation, at least of, I think of all of council, at least of many on council, that this pedestrian safety bridge that was presented originally in the summer of 2021 as part of this Cleveland Connector project is an integral part of the project, and it should not receive any unnecessary undue delay. So
And we were
if we need
surprised.
to get along in the
Yeah.
design planning phase, and I suggest we get along.
They go hand in hand. I didn't even know that,
Well, I don't think any of us all of us agree with that.
yeah, we all agree.
That's the plan we thought we adopted, so we expect to see it happen. Are you up, Matt, for the next one too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 15C, 15B.
15C, an ordinance to approve a fourth amendment to stadium development lease agreement.
Okay.
So, Mayor and Council, this.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
go
may I have a motion and a second?
moved.
Second. Motion and second. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, this action is to modify the lease with the Greenville Drive for the stadium in exchange for investments in stadium improvements over the next few years. This money was already appropriated by you all in your FY23 budget. This is the formal agreement to provide that money per the budget appropriation.
Is this from 2032 to 36?
Yes, ma'am. So that is the only, so as noted, there's the language is not finalized. We have agreement in principle. They have agreed to extend the lease out to 2036. We're just specifying the language in sections 4, D, E, and F around what that extension looks like. But in exchange for the investment, they are extending their base lease out to 2036.
Right. Questions, Matt, beyond the earlier discussions? Clerk, call the roll.
Councilman DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Okay, got through that. 16A, resolutions.
A resolution to document the required governing body review of the City of Greenville submission of a grant application to the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
So moved.
Motion in many seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16B,
A resolution to approve amendments to the bylaws and the standing operating procedures of the Public Safety Citizens Review Board.
So moved.
Second.
motion second. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Mr. Manager, you got any comments?
Just one reminder, Mayor, you all have been invited to a ribbon cutting at District 356 on Green Day, which is on Wednesday. It will take place at 5:30 PM. So we hope to see you all there. Big city investment, big investment by our partners at the Drive. Nothing else of significance tonight.
It's okay. All right, if the meeting is adjourned. Ms. Fleming can go home.
6:42 PM. 6:42 PM.
Oh, you brought it. Started.